we thought it'd be a good idea. I saw someone in a post on Facebook the other day asking, hey, I got a new RV, it's a 38 footer, throw tips at me. And I asked her, I said, what kind of tips are you looking for? She said, literally anything, we don't know what we're doing. So we thought, since we don't know what we're doing, we'd give you some tips, because we've been not knowing what we're doing a lot longer than a lot of other people.
I'm grateful, man. Oh, how could I complain?
Today we have Mr. Scott Philippek. We met him in our first year traveling.
In Livingston, Texas. I think we were both there getting our residency established.
I'm Dave McNary. I've been full-time RVing for 3 years. And we've just met you here at the park here.
Yeah.
Beth Page. A couple RT tips I have is never trust an RV park pedestal. There are too many things that can be wrong with them. They could be worn out. They might have a stuck pin from a previous plug. They might be wrong polarity. You might have low voltage, high voltage, or surges and sags. So have some sort of power protection, like a surge suppressor with a power monitor.
That low voltage condition can cause a fire in your rig, and reverse polarity can cause a hot skin condition when you walk into your rig, meaning you touch your rig and you get zapped.
And that happens sometimes when they're assembling these things and they run a screw into the metal framing and they hit a wire, and it's an AC wire, so that also causes your hot skin issues. Anything over 3 volts could be dangerous, so you want to periodically test your metal points on your RV for a possible hot bite. You can do that with a standard voltmeter, one ground to the ground point of a plug, pedestal, power plug, ground wire, and then the other end to the negative end of your voltmeter, and then the positive touch the metal parts of your RV, see if you've got any voltage.
Has that ever happened to you?
I've tested for them and found a few. Highest I've seen was 62 volts.
When I was in the Navy, I got zapped so many times I thought it tickled. Too many times. I don't want it anymore. Scott, what tips do you have for us?
Well, coming off of the electrical here, your plug, before you even put it in the pedestal, if it's dull, it's not going to conduct anywhere near as well. And that's a real simple fix. Some fine-grained sandpaper on the plug, polish it up, and then it's nice and shiny. You'll get the best possible connection. I guess I have become a little bit of a black tank expert. I'm a geek. I got a spreadsheet where I track every time we dump the black tank. So I find it really handy to know how long I can go before the two of us get black tank full enough where I have to dump, because you should never, ever, ever trust your tank sensors. You get a brand new RV, I wouldn't even trust them then. Usually if it's reading full, I'm close, but they never read empty, ever. I can flush for a couple of hours, and it's nice that we've got a built-in flush for our black tank, but I've never gotten them to read completely empty. Another thing that helps is use plenty of water when you flush, and I always make sure that I've got a good quantity in the black tank approaching full, if at all possible, before I dump it. Then I get the bigger whoosh. It flushes the tank out better. And always dump the black and then the gray, because you want to have the gray to help flush out your stinky slinky.
So make sure you fill your gray before you start doing a black dump.
Yes.
My only follow-up to that is the hose you get with your RV. It's usually got this nice little cap that goes on each end of it to keep it from the nastiness from draining out inside the back of your bumper where you carry it. don't forget to take that cap off before you open the tank. It is not a pleasant mess to have to clean up, because you can put your hose onto the attachment at both ends, on the ground and on your rig, and you can open that, and your hose filling up with black, and you've got no way to get out of there, is not fun to have to clean up. It'll ruin a good pair of shoes quick.
And then David, you had some great recommendations about solar.
Yeah, I do a lot of boondocking extensively. My longest period off any AC power pedestal, any Torq, was 2 years. I have a Class A motorhome with a 16-foot toy hauler trailer that I've customized. I've got 1,800 watts of solar on the panel, on the trailer. I've got a full 4,000 watt inverter. I've got 600 amp hour batteries. And the one thing I need to emphasize is a lot of solar installers, shops and so forth, will oversell what you actually need to power your RV with solar. You want to do a good power needs analysis, figure out what you're consuming in your RV over a 24-hour period. Do that in wattage. Now, once you've got that in wattage, you can go to a website called altestore.com. They got a lot of good tools for calculating power and solar needs and battery bank size. And the first step is always determine how much power you think you're going to need to consume in the 24-hour period. Double that by the number of days you might need to go before you want to charge your batteries back up, and then start from there. Build up the battery bank, figure out what size battery bank you're going to need for the amount of time you want to be off, running off DC, or running a small inverter or even a large inverter for AC power, and then look at how much you're consuming and how much you're taking out of those batteries to determine how large of a solar array you need to put into your RV. You usually don't want to go any more than 50C charge, which means if you're going to be consuming 2,500 watts of power in 2 days, you're going to need to restore that 2,500 watts into the batteries. It's wattage divided by current to get your voltage, and you can calculate how many watts you're going to need to restore. So if you're going to recharge your batteries and you've consumed, say, 500 watts, which is about, off the top of my head, say 60 amps, then you're going to calculate you want to get at least 30 to 40 amps to recharge per hour to get those batteries recharged in a reasonable time. So if you got 400 watts or 400 amp hours of batteries, you don't need 1,200 or 1,800 watts of solar to recharge those batteries. 600 to 800 watts is more than enough to recharge a 400 amp hour battery bank, and it's the most cost-effective method. Is if you need the size, start with your current needs, grow the system as you need to. So don't get oversized to start with. You can always grow larger down the road.
It's a fact. One thing I will say on that, though, don't get a modified sine wave inverter if you're going to be running sensitive electronics. You will regret it. You'll end up having to replace the inverter later. Yes, it's much cheaper to buy a modified sine wave, but these days you can get a pure sine inverter pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. And I would also avoid using aluminum wiring.
Stay away from aluminum. Always get the copper. If you're going with a high wattage or even a low wattage inverter, you want to go with a good power cable, and what they're normally using is a Welders grade cables. They've got the most strands, they're flexible, so you can go around bends easily, but they're going to cost you a little bit more, but that cost is going to conduct your current and electricity so much better. They'll stay cooler. You'll run a lot better. You won't lose voltage through and current through heat in the wires.
And no matter what Bubba the electrician says, don't let them use solid core wire in your RV. Those things will vibrate loose and you will end up with a fire.
Speaking of that, you do want to go into you want to do this with there's no power going into your RV.
Yeah.
You want to disconnect your RV from the pedestal power, make sure there's no power. You want to disconnect your battery disconnect, make sure there's no power going there. You want to make sure if you got an inverter, make sure it's turned off. And you want to periodically go into your power panel where your circuit breakers are for your AC and your fuses for DC. open that box up, take the cover off. There are wire connectors. You need to periodically go in there, do it as an annual maintenance aspect. Get a relatively inexpensive Torq screwdriver. They're about $49 to $69 on Amazon. And you want to torque all those connectors down, the wired connectors down to about 20 inch-pounds. So you do that every year. The biggest thing that's going to cause an electrical short or electrical sparks, which can cause fire, draw more current, is a loose connection. When you have loose connection, you've got loose connection, it's going to draw more current for that connection. It's going to be loose, it's going to spark. That spark can cause a fire.
Yep.
So,
little story about that. Something that's pretty common. If you've got your plug that you use to plug into the pedestal in an RV park, and you pull it off and you notice discoloration on one of the legs, that discoloration is caused by heat. That heat is caused by not having a proper torque on the screw 99% of the time. We had one we drove around with for a year with a burn mark on it before I found the part number to buy and replace it. When I took it apart to see what was going on, it had burned through the back side of the connector so bad that the case was cracking. It was literally cracking. I had a fire burning in my rig every time there was electricity running through the plugs. So don't do that. And once you see the burn mark on it, replace your cable. That burn that's on the outside, it's also burning the insulation along that line on the inside, and you can end up with a fire.
Speaking of fire,
I'm a big fan of propane fire pits, especially the ones that light automatically, because sometimes you'll be at a place where they have a ban on wood fires. That's A. And B, sometimes you'll be at a place where wood is out of season and you can't find wood. So it's easy, it burns clean, it's very warm, it's adjustable flame. And the other thing I also like is, especially for those of you, whether you have small cargo space or big cargo space like we do, I recommend getting bins to flip your seasonal clothes. One of those bins has all of our seasonal decorations. So invest in some bins and flip your clothes from season to season. And also, I recommend wine. Have a lot of wine. Have a lot of wine in your rig. Cheers.
On the topic, you mentioned tightening down the screws in your electrical panel. You need to tighten the screws everywhere. Every time you drive your rig down the road, it's going through about a 6.0 earthquake. If you're like Chris and I, you guys have seen our videos. If you haven't, please go back and watch our videos. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell so you know when you see our faces again. Do that. But when you're going down the road in the rig, everything comes loose. There are screws on the outside of your rig that hold on. On ours, we've got aluminum paneling, and there's girding that goes around the tires. There are screws that run up and down the side of your slides that hold seals in place. Those things vibrate loose, and if one's loose when you bring in your slides, you're going to rip a hole in the seal, and now you've got water coming in. Or maybe you've had your rig for a couple of years, and the screws that are underneath a piece of rubber sealant on the top of your slide have rubbed clean, and now when water stands, it leaks into your rig. Go around and check those things. It's important. The other thing, not only screws come loose, we had a leak in the bathroom. Water coming from under our tub. Come to find out, underneath the tub, there's little S, I can't remember what they're called, little trap underneath the hose.
U-trap.
U-trap.
That screw that holds the pipe onto the bottom of the drain had come loose. And that's just from the rig vibrating and us getting in and out of the tub. Works its way loose, and suddenly I've got water going across the floor, and I've got water damage on the molding around the bottom of our door from it.
Actually, it's every faucet fixture that
Oh, yeah.
you've got those screw-on faucet fixtures that screw on. They tighten a seal. You've got to periodically recheck those tightness of those screw-on seals. A lot of people will get leaks because that vibration, which is loosening your screws, is also loosening those screw seals.
We noticed that our sink would slide back and forth like it wasn't attached. is because there's these little butterfly nuts on the underside that have to be tight that pinch it down to the counter, and they'd wiggled loose. So now our sink slides side to side.
Not anymore.
I fixed it. It took me 3 months of Christy complaining and saying, please fix this, before I finally got under there and did 2 minutes of work to fix it.
Water, on the topic of water connections,
Yeah.
a lot of your RVs are using PEX water lines.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pressure fixed connectors at all the T-joints. You want to get a good water regulator.
That's a fact.
Run no more higher than 45 to 55 pounds per inch for your water going into your RV if you're running off city water.
Because you could end up blowing those out, and now you've got a mess to deal with.
A lot of your RV parks are 70, 80, 100 pounds pressure because they're drawing from the well and they're feeding every site in that campground.
On to some different kind of tips. You're new in a rig, you're loading things up because you're downsizing, you're getting rid of everything. Get rid of a lot, and when you think you've gotten rid of it all, get rid of 50% more. And then 6 months down the road, do it again. Because you need to get your weight down.
My RV tip is everyone who has a driver's license should learn how to drive the RV. So go to a parking lot and practice.
Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye.